Hello and welcome to ClapperCast. I'm your host as always, Carson Timar, and today I'm joined by the King of Burbank, Michael Fairbanks, to discuss Superman. James Gunn's new take on the classic Superman story kicks off the DC universe. This is a film that we were both quite excited for, and we definitely have some mixed reactions for. This is definitely not a film we absolutely loved, and today we have a bit of a laugh and maybe even a bit of a cry as we discuss what the film could have been and what it actually ended up being. Just a warning, because this is being posted a little bit earlier than normal, that we will have a spoiler-free section and then a spoiler section. So if you've not seen the film at the time of listening to this, just make sure to keep ears open for that. I believe it's about 20 minutes in, but you can find the exact timestamp down in the description below. But still, I think this is a very fun episode. We're in the middle of the summer movie season, and why not discuss possibly the biggest film of the year? Thank you so much for listening and supporting ClapperCast. Now let's get to our review of James Gunn's Superman. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Superman. We are actually quite timely on this episode, which I'm thrilled about. So let's go ahead and we'll do a spoiler-free section. There's not really a ton to spoil, but we will get into spoilers and then talk about the DC universe as a whole, because this is kicking off the DC universe. Once again, back at another start of a DC cinematic universe. I'll turn it over to you first. You, I think, were more excited for this than I was, but even I was genuinely quite excited for the film. What were your thoughts on James Gunn's Superman? Did this live up to your expectations?
Well, no. So I love James Gunn, and I've pretty consistently over the last few years have said that he is the best director working in the superhero genre. I think that even with what I thought of this movie, I might still hold that opinion depending on how things go. I'd say that he's probably the only one besides maybe Ryan Coogler who's currently working at it to consistently have a sense of authorship behind his work in the genre.
The
So
Taika Waititi erasure, but continue.
right. Well, we're not talking about written in crayon, although perhaps we are now. Um the so I was so excited to see Superman, and I was so excited by the idea of having him shepherding a whole new universe. I thought that was such a fun idea to really put a capital C creative in charge of shepherding this whole thing. But after seeing it, I think that executives and studio notes might actually have their place, because to my utter shock, I didn't just find this movie disappointing. I found it actively and sort of grossly incompetent at virtually every turn. I think it's a terrible film that only, I'd say, half delivers on what it promises, but beyond that, just has such a cursory and just poorly executed story structure. One of the messiest screenplays I've ever seen approved at this budget level, and we'll kind of get into the intricacies of why that is. But just right off the bat, I felt like I was watching a small child try to summarize an episode of a cartoon series they just watched, but as they're forgetting it. The movie starts in the middle of Act Two, and suddenly we're going, and there's this really kind of arrogant presumption that we're just going to care about these characters because we've known them before. We've seen them before. There's previous iterations, so therefore we should just have locked in, built in knowledge. And the movie from then on proceeds to just earn nothing. It's built on the iconography of these characters, but with the exception of a couple scenes that actually have substance, we're just kind of watching them run through this story that just has numerous problems, and it's just kind of a nonstop assault on the senses. I really found it to be borderline hard to watch, which I really just couldn't believe. And I had so many problems with the overall tone too that I'd love to get into a little bit later. But what did you think?
Yeah, we have plenty to get into. I was excited for this, and I think it's important for context to know that the day I watched Superman, I basically did like a low key triple feature with some breaks in between where I watched Superman Returns, Man of Steel, and Superman. So I will say, just going in and seeing color on the big screen in a Superman film really like kind of wowed me at first. There's a lot here to appreciate. Back up. There's some things to appreciate. I appreciate that this is not just going for the origin story again. We'll get into what it's actually doing. But I appreciate that we're changing up the formula a bit there. I think when it comes to the human side of things, literally the only Clark Kent scene I really enjoy. I think this is probably out of all the Superman films, and to be fair, there's not a Superman film I really love. So if you are coming to this with like, I am such a Man of Steel stan, or I'm such a stan of the old movies, like I don't need to hear about it in the comments. I don't need you to be homophobic. I don't care. They're not my films. Not for me. I think this is the best iteration of the human side of Superman that we have. I think the performance behind him is really strong. I think the performances overall, for the most part, are quite strong. And there are little bits here where it's like, I'm not a huge James Gunn fan, unlike you. I think outside of Guardians 3, I really struggle to pick a lot of really any film, I guess, really from his filmography that I truly appreciate. But there are like some moments where it's like, the dog is cute. There are some stylized moments that I enjoy. Maybe I expected it to be a little bit more than what was shown in like the two trailers. Pretty much any moment in the trailers that you're like, wow, that looked like fun style. That's the only fun moments in the film. It really does not have anything else to it. But I will just echo completely what you said, which this screenplay, and the more you think about it, the more it just like falls apart. It's probably, again, peace and love to anyone who loved this film. I know the DC stands are quite aggressive and quite, they have their thoughts. It's probably one of the worst screenplays maybe ever written. Like, it is fucking atrocious. It makes no sense. As you mentioned, it's not even the fact that for me, we jump in the middle of an action scene, but from that point on, there is literally no introduction to any character, to anything. It is quite incoherent with what it's trying to say. Character motivations on the most basic level are impossible to follow. I will pay anyone $100 who can, I'm not really going to do this to be clear, but anyone who can pay, I'll pay $100 who can explain to me what Lex Luthor's actual motivation is in this film. It doesn't really make sense. And he just starts yelling about Galileo. We can theorize it later in the spoiler section, I guess, if you want to talk about it. It just never comes together. There's no character here that like you never know these characters. You never care about these characters, as you mentioned. I know I'm kind of repeating some of what you said. A lot of the things established just never come back. It's a film with a 5-second attention span, and I don't even mean that in the fact that like it's just throwing jokes at you, but it'll introduce a character or a threat or a concept, and you'll just never get back to it. You will never get back to the Pentagon discussing Superman. You will never get back to the hammer of whatever that country is called, which I know is from the comics, but also these countries are like the most fictionalized names I've ever heard for countries, to the point where like it really was distracting. You will never even get back to Superman, like, and we'll get into the politics of this film. You'll never get back to Superman even with that conflict. Like, it's very, very unsatisfying. You really have to go in and just completely turn your brain off and be like, oh, it's action. This scene is written to be humorous. But there's nothing else to it. It's a very, very poor screenplay, which especially for Gunn, which even if I don't find him like, I find him normally to be a competent writer, just like not a funny writer. I think he thinks he's funny when he's not a lot of the time. This one's just, it's not good. If you were to actually try to trace and plot everything that this film tries to accomplish, it's not coherent, which is pretty disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that what's kind of most insulting about it and most disappointing is that I do think he makes a big tonal swing here. What I was thinking about a lot during it is that it felt to me like a really bad attempt at like a Paul Verhoeven, RoboCop, Starship Troopers vibe, where you have these really realistic, sober political issues where you've got this metaphor for Israel and Palestine, and you've got technocrats, and you've got all these kind of tropes that exist within our actual world paired up against giant monsters and Green Lantern and Metamorpho and the portals to another world and all these things that are just so kind of ridiculous, but he is such a cynic and such a sardonic guy that there's kind of an ugliness to even the parts of it that are supposed to be fun. Anytime it goes to the Daily Planet, it is the worst movie of the year. I truly don't. I can't stress enough how he has turned he made a point to just put all of these random supporting characters who I assume are in the comic books. Again, everything in this movie, if you like it, it's just because you know it. It's so inside baseball. It's so niche to a point where like even I, as someone who loves the genre, found it annoying. Um, but you've got there's this subplot with Jimmy Olsen and Lex Luthor's girlfriend, Miss Taskmaster, that is so, it's not just mean spirited, it's like 1980s level misogynistic. And there's a lot of that kind of comedy in it, like just very broad, almost like catchphrase comedy where there's so many moments in this movie where I feel like he's really trying to have those like, again, Verhoeven or like John Carpenter lines, like the "I'll buy that for $1." Like there's so many moments where I felt him reaching for that, and I think it so aggressively undercuts the whole line that they've been pitching about this movie, which is the like, this is a movie about a kind, sincere person in an ugly world. It's not really, because it's so hyper focused on all of the ugliness that you don't really get that much of Clark being the contrast to that. He certainly talks about it, he gives a couple speeches about it, but for the most part, he's so busy like running around and getting his ass beat because the story's going at 55 fucking miles an hour that that kind of contrast just isn't really felt. And it was so, it was cringeworthy. And I love his humor. Like I think in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, his humor totally works because they're a ragtag bunch of like assholes and outlaws and monsters. And I would say the same thing about Suicide Squad. He has that sensibility that works when you're dealing with characters who are on the fringes, who are raunchy. He's great at it. I really do. I really believe that even still. But to try and fuse it with this unbelievably shallow political commentary, it really feels like Diet the Boys. It feels so influenced by the boys and the way that they kind of rip things from the headlines, but also kind of trying to do sincere, genuine, oorah, like makes your heart aflutter superhero stuff, and it doesn't mesh. And I'm really kind of scared for all the other directors who now have to come into this world and make it work. I don't see it.
Did you ever see his film Super? I want to say from like 2011, maybe 2010.
Yeah, I've seen all his movies. Super, I like. It definitely has a pretty repulsive turn, a repulsive heel turn in the third
Yeah.
act, um, where sexual assault gets involved, and then it just kind of. But I like it better than Kick Ass. Like I remember at the time, Kick Ass came out, and I thought that movie was awful. And I think Super kind of does what Kick-Ass is doing, but in a bit, just in a way that reads a little funnier in my brain. But again, that's another very cynical film, and that again, that's where I think he really works.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm fresh off my first ever viewing of Super. I will say, as soon as we scheduled this for tonight, I was like, "No, I have to watch Super." Finally, I was gonna do it before we were gonna record it, and blah blah. I would say the writing is somewhat similar in each, where I think he really is not great with a character like you mentioned. Like this, I really did not like how Superman was portrayed. I think my biggest issue really is like I just can't cut. And this is the first thing I told the rep after my screening was like I just wish it was more fun in every way. I think the action is never that fun because Superman And to be clear, they make a whole point that he lost his first fight. Do not expect them to ever deal with that again. He quite literally loses, minor spoilers, I guess, every single fight in this film. There's not a single moment of conflict that he does not need save from or he is not good at. The action scenes are never fun because of a result, because we're just always watching Superman get his ass kicked. The politics you mentioned, like, number one, they just don't do anything with these politics. There's a very, very clear statement here on Israel and Palestine. I would even venture to say, and I don't think this is the film's intention, but some of this reads quite interestingly with what's going on with like ICE and the illegal deportation and holding of individuals. In theory, I like a superhero film that tackles these real world issues and is bold on this level to have such a stance. James Gunn has been very vocal about that. I respect him for that, telling how this is an immigrant story. None of that's really ever really addressed with much bite, but even more so, I felt the tonal issues of like, you're trying to have this fun superhero film and, oh my God, Jimmy Olsen, he's getting hit on by this girl. How funny, everyone's laughing. And then it's like, by the way, remember this real life genocide that we're alluding to? And I was just like, oh, this is totally not quite working. I guess I think let's get into spoilers. Let's just open up for spoiler section, because I do want to say, like, so just if you've not seen it yet, spoiler section now. If you would have told me there's a piece of Superman media where there's like a clear representation of Palestine, and you have the visual of a kid holding up a Superman flag saying Superman's going to save us, the IDF in this case is pointing the gun at his head about to shoot him, and you tell me that Superman does not save him, is fucking crazy. Like, it's just not satisfying. Like, what are we doing that you're going to introduce a conflict? And I understand, I really believe this was written in quite late when you look at some of the casting controversies. Like, I genuinely think they were like, shit, we gotta like make sure everyone knows we're pro-Palestine. It's bonkers. It's a bonkers writing and bonkers politics to include. I just think really hurts the film and the enjoyment of the film.
The scene, I don't think that there will be a worse scene this year than the scene where, as you said, I'm just going to say the Palestinian kid. I'm not going to fucking remember the fake country. The Palestinian kid holds up the flag, and then suddenly Green Lantern and the Justice Gang, who are all woefully underdeveloped characters, by the way, kind of just pitiful performances, except for, I would say, Edie Gaffetti as Mr. Terrific. But even then, I think that performance is getting pretty overrated. Um, they show up and they make a bunch of jokes and they go, "All right, kid, Superman's not coming. He's busy. Watch what we can do." And they start knocking over the American military or the Israel military, and then Hawk Girl goes and she kills Netanyahu. And she, like, I'm just sitting there like, this isn't doing what you think it's doing, and it is trivializing this issue. And I think that this is something that I think people talk about a lot when it comes to like conservatism in superhero media, is just like, by the notion of there being these beings who can just be like almighty saviors and just like, solve the problem. It's an exceptionalist, mentality. So even though they're kind of trying to thread this line of Superman doesn't agree with the American government, and by the way, weird that America gets to be a named country, but everything else, fuck it, everything else, that's, blah blah blah, stan. Like, that's a really odd statement when you think about it. But yeah, no, Superman doesn't agree with the Pentagon. He doesn't agree with the president. That, like, there are moments of that really work. Like when Lois Lane is interviewing him and she asks, like, "Did you consult with the president?" And he just goes like, "Ugh." Like, that's a great moment in the audience. Like, I really think there are aspects of it that work, but because you don't see the beginning of it, you hear about the conflict secondhand from the opening crawl, and then the next bit of information you get is Lois Lane kind of summarizing it. I don't understand the fact that I couldn't sit there and have my own opinion about what Superman did. and just had to take Lois's word for it. I thought that that robbed me of so much as a viewer. It's such a tell don't show movie overall. But that's really where I felt that it failed in that regard, is that this whole like kind of moral gray area they're kind of trying to get into, they make it very black and white at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because you as a viewer are supposed to just be like, ah, Lois, you're overreacting. We all know Superman's the one who's right in the end. Like it's just that's what's really insulting about it. Is it like flirts with complexity in the most brain dead way,
Absolutely.
in the most on the nose way. And I think that James Gunn thinks he's gonna get these like brownie points from, the left. To be clear, I'm on the left. he's gonna get he's gonna get brownie points from like leftists for this subplot, and I don't think he is. I really think I'm so curious to see what the overall reaction is to this movie once it leaves the geek sphere. We're still in that phase. The critics have seen it, the geek influencers have seen it, and as of yesterday, all the people who would be like, I want to go to the Amazon Prime screening of Superman have seen it. I want to know what somebody's mom thinks of this movie. I want to know what somebody's partner who's never fucking picked up a comic book in their life is going to say. Like, I really have a feeling that there is going to be a big portion of the general audience that just like retracts from this movie because it is just so niche in a negative way.
This really suffers from like I think the conflict is bad for two reasons. Number one, you have the Star Wars prequel, and we talked about this. I feel like we talked about this with another film. I don't really remember which one, where you just have no context, so you cannot invest. I mean, you mentioned having like the political gray area and understanding. You just don't care. Like I don't understand what's happening. And then Superman like tortured this guy, but it's not clear. Like it's very very odd. It sucks because this is like the most, in my opinion, captivating part of Superman's character from what I've seen. To be fair, I'm not a comics person. I'm not someone who's like a stan and I know all the lore. From what I've seen, I think the most compelling part of Superman's character is him trying to do right in a world where he doesn't necessarily belong to any nation. He's just trying to do what's right. He has all these pressures. We will get there. Not to be controversial, I think this is something that people are vastly, vastly overlooking within Superman 4, Quest for Peace, I want to say it was called. I know everyone hates that movie. People say it's one of the worst films of all time. I think that film is so compelling for the first half about Superman, like going through this journey alone. He has no one to talk to. He's trying to figure out what to do. He has these kids who are like, please get rid of these nukes. And it's like, well, you can't really just get rid of all the nukes. And then it turns out you can. But like, I think that draw between Superman being pulled in all these directions and then you have the media, like, I think that is such an interesting point for Superman. And this almost goes there. Again, that one Clark Kent scene is, I think, phenomenal. I actually don't love the actress who plays Lois Lane. I feel like that's a hot take from what I'm seeing online, but I really like outside of her, I really like that scene overall. It sucks that it doesn't go deeper on that. How did you feel? I will say, the parents, there was quite a big lore change from what I'm hearing. Again, not a comic stan. With the parents sending Superman on Earth, not to do, there is a message and it's broken, but then magically gets fixed. He thought he was there to do good for humans, but he's actually here to rule, and he's here to fuck a bunch of women and have this whole group rebuild Krypton. How did that? I don't know how big of a Superman stan I guess you are. Was that like? Did you like that change? Did you not like that change? Did you notice that it was a change? Because I just kind of sat there like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. Some people are having really charged reactions, though. Is that you at all?
Well, first of all, as you might expect me to go first, leave it to Bradley Cooper to have the most subversive and brilliant take on Jor-El without even speaking a word of English or even moving his head. That's my king.
I am
Let's get
so
that.
mad. I am so mad that was spoiled for you. I was sitting in the screening, and like I don't really keep up with the news, so I had no idea this was spoiled. And I was like, "Oh my god, Michael is gonna scream in the theater when he shows up!" And then you knew I was so mad.
Well, yeah, it leaked. It leaked out of like the test screenings. I was excited about it because I thought it was gonna be, like he was gonna get like the Marlon Brando or Russell Crowe like big emotional kind of thesis monologue, and instead it's just him mumbling this fictional language. His hair looked nice, but I don't mind it. I think that that's one of the Gunn-esque changes that I actually think works. And I also, in the aspect that a lot of the guys who are in Jor-El's position of power, so to speak, they're like that. I think that this whole idea of, this guy would send this kid who he perceives as a higher species to go and, populate, spread his seed to another planet. I thought it made total sense. I didn't mind that much. I do think it, I get that the language barrier thing. Maybe I just wanted to hear Bradley Cooper speak English, but it's just like there's something about that made me feel disconnected from that twist, and maybe I wish that they had like translated it somehow. God knows they could have been like, we used an AI tool to translate what Jor-El was saying, just like something that to make me actually like, because I think there was a lack of clarity even as the movie was ending of like, did Jor-El actually say that, or did Lex and his army of monkeys, quite literally, manipulate the speed? Like, I still wasn't entirely clear on that. So I think, if anything, that was really my issue with it, was once again just rushed and poorly presented. But in theory, I didn't mind it.
But they had the great scene at the end where they dealt with that issue, because at the end of the film, if everyone's mad at Superman because of this message and everyone's not mad at him at the end, so they must have dealt with that conflict. It definitely didn't go like completely not mentioned and nothing changed as far as the perception of why they all hate him. Like, totally, that James Gunn would not just like kind of leave that to die in like the first act of the film. Obviously, if you've not seen it, I'm kidding. They just don't talk about it. So I had no idea about that. The other big twist really is that Lex creates a clone of Superman. I didn't move. I was sat there, felt nothing from it. And it's over with in like 5 minutes. So I don't really know why it's there. A few other just random notes I will point out, because I did have some notes afterwards, things that didn't really make sense. The government just lets Lex Luthor kidnap Superman. I guess they're just chill with it. They're like, yeah, go do whatever you want with him. I mean, it's a little bit more realistic now with current politics, but I still felt like that was kind of an odd move, especially because you show so much. You spend like multiple scenes in the Pentagon with these people, and you never get to hear them talk. They never bring him in for questioning. It never goes anywhere. Lex Luthor's plan, again, not really sure what he's intending to do here, because it seems like he genuinely believes Superman is a danger for like the American public, but then he also has this other plan to take over half of he just to take over Palestine. I don't really even know why that conflict is happening, because they're giving the country to Lex afterwards, and I guess that's just to be rich. That didn't really come out for me. Everyone. The ending, I didn't really appreciate that they had no plan. This guy, Lex Luthor, literally programs like, what is it, like thousands and thousands of moves to beat Superman, and never once considers what if the dog is there, the dog that exists, and the dog just saves him. Oh, okay, I guess. The big colossal danger here, the earth is splitting in two. I do feel like I would survive, because you could move 5 feet to the left and be fine. It's really casual on the sides. They show a scene as it's going towards the people on the building, and they're like, oh my god, we can't run this way, what are we gonna do? Literally run 5 feet that way and you'll be fine. You see that. Also, there's a scene here where Superman saves one woman from a bridge, and at least 100 other people die on the bridge, and it's just never dealt with. That was pretty wild, I thought.
And the building's tumbling over.
Yeah,
Let's not forget that.
buildings over.
Like right before, there's like 3 skyscrapers tumbling over, Man of Steel style, and he gets under it with his arms.
No, he didn't do that. He like barely lifted it for a minute.
Like, it was very clearly kind of a shot at like the
Yeah.
fact that Henry Cavill didn't even like try, which I guess is fine, but he didn't actually save anybody. Like, people would still be falling out of the broken glass. Like, it wouldn't have made, like, I guess, intention matters.
There's people walking on the bridge. There's people walking on the bridge. He lets one car drive away, and then he drops the building. He's
Yeah.
at least 100 people dead. And again, even in that scene, it's not like really a heroic scene. He's like barely lifting it for a second and before he has to drop because he's just so weak he can't hold it. Really lacking in my opinion, just like those big Superman like whoa moments of power. There's just nothing here that makes him look strong in the slightest. He falls into like a river and he's like, I can't get out. And then his immediate reaction is, we're dead, Crypto. Like there's nothing we can do. It's insane. I also will say I really do like Crypto. It's amazing how much a dog being on screen works for me. It's great. I do wish his effects were better. I will say in a movie that I think overall looks good, his effects just constantly, it was just like, oh, we're not there with dogs. I'm so sad about that. The last note I'll say, Supergirl is here for like 30 seconds at the end. I loved it. We'll get to the DC universe and our thoughts on it moving forward at the end. I thought that was one of the bright spots of the film, which I think says something about the film where I'm like, wow, that cameo really did it. Fuck John Cena. Supergirl was the real cameo here. That was fantastic. Super excited for that film. Were there any notes or anything in the film that really stood out to you that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, a few things. For one, I did want to bring up the fact that I thought that David Cornsweet, Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult were very well cast, and I think we're working with really, really bad material. I think David really does have that kind of aw shucks quality in a way that doesn't feel affected. It feels very, very natural. And when he does get his couple moments where he really does feel like the fully realized character, I see the potential for him to really become legendary in this role if the material gets a lot better. Rachel Brosnahan, I disagree with you. I thought she was excellent. I actually think she's the only person who feels like she's in a movie that is real. Um, and Nicholas Hoult, I wasn't crazy about, but I think he got the point across. I think just very shallow writing, but he was very clearly had a take on this character that I enjoyed. Um, Crypto, this is kind of just something that I feel is wrong with the movie in general. Superman is separate from Crypto for almost the entire runtime. And he's separate from anything and anyone that he cares about or could or would make an impact on him or the story for so long that by the time Crypto comes back and they're together again, the movie's almost over. And I do think that Crypto's big, for lack of a better comparison, Hulk smash moment at the end is pretty great. It definitely felt reminiscent of when the Hulk like beats the shit out of Loki. Like I did think that that was kind of a good pull, uh, even though it's very clearly a rip off of that scene. But it just I wish I'd gotten more time to feel that connection, which is how I feel about him and virtually all of the characters. So that's what I would say. Is it's like all the pieces are there. Like you've got the right cast, you've got the right kind of overall sense of the universe and where things should be, the kind of tone, this very kind of DC animation esque aesthetic and tone is very much correct and feels like what people would want to see, but it's just so poorly written. And I really feel it like it comes down to the fact that when you're the boss in every sense of the word, you can just be like, yeah, my script's good enough. Like all I could imagine was like James Gunn in every aspect of this movie just being like, yeah, people will get it. And no one could tell him no. Like it's just like I really feel like and I hate to do this, but like I really feel like had he had like a Kevin Feige to be like, hey, this sucks. let's let's drill down on it a little bit. I think it might have been better. Like as much as we shit on, the MCU for interfering too much, which is also a problem. I think that you need to having a purely a cinematic universe purely driven on one man's creative instincts is not going to work. And to that point, I do, and to lastly address Supergirl, immediately was crushing on her, and I really hope that in her film we get a Craig Gillespie movie and not a watered down James Gunn movie. And he didn't write it, to be clear. So but I think that that's definitely in the cards. But that would be my concern there.
And there are a lot of very unique voices, I guess, let's say, touching the DC universe if it continues how it's scheduled. You have Craig, you have Mike Flanagan writing a script. You apparently have Luca Guadagnino directing a film. I don't really need that, and I'm just fascinated how that goes. But this is a DC universe that's clearly building itself on some really interesting and some really strong voices. I am curious after this, and Gunn is producing all the films, but not necessarily writing and directing. It's a little early. We don't know the box office results specifically to be able to talk about kind of financially how the DC universe is looking. Though I kind of like, I think it's a little rough with the direction of that. Just personally though, how do you feel about this universe moving forward? Is this something where you are still just have an open mind for what's coming next? Is this something where you're kind of already putting some brakes on? Are you gonna go see Clayface? Like, where do you stand on this?
I'm open to them getting better, but I really, really think that James Gunn needs to take a enormous step back and just produce. That's really kind of my red line with it, is that I think that his kind of overall vision for like how he wants to run the studio is cool, and I'm very curious I want to see how Supergirl and Clayface and potentially Sergeant Rock, if Luke Guadagnino spins the roulette wheel and makes it. Um, I want to see how those turn out. I don't want to just say, oh shit, we got to throw the whole thing away just because I didn't like this one movie. But we simply cannot do the tone of this movie across an entire franchise. It's not going to work. It's just, it's too, it's like I said, it's too niche. It's too kind of sardonic. It's too, I don't know. It just feels to me like very much kind of comic book guy from The Simpsons if he got to just create a whole cinematic universe. So I'm nervous about that, but I will definitely like. I think surely what will happen is that Supergirl will have a great trailer, and I'll go, well, I'm excited again. And Clayface, we'll see. I think it's fun that they just cast a totally random unknown actor in that part. I think that's really cool. And I also think that the big choice of will Batman be Robert Pattinson or will it be a different guy is going to make a big impact. Personally, after seeing Superman, I don't want them to cross over and kind of hope that at the end of the Batman Part 2, Matt Reeves introduces his own Superman so that we can absolutely make sure that they remain separate. And by the way, just overall, I have so much more respect for how the Batman approaches similar storytelling of the characters already established and we're kind of just moving. Um, Matt Reeves absolutely dog walked James Gunn on that kind of approach in every conceivable way. So that's going to be a big swing either way. I'm waiting to see how that's going to all work out. I'm wondering if this is going to be something where is it going to end up being offshoot movies directed by directors, and then anytime it's a big important movie like where it's World's Finest or Justice League or XYZ, is Gunn gonna always direct those? God, I hope not. um there's a lot of questions, and I'm definitely, I would say, less enthusiastic. Like in all of my thoughts about Superman so far, my writing or whatever, I've referred to it as a genre killer because I just like, I don't believe that regular people are going to like this movie as much as the geek sphere. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I just don't think so. I think if you showed this to someone who was like trying to get into superheroes, they would feel alienated by it, not pulled in. I just I think this is a movie that is for a very specific audience, white men, and, and I'll leave it there.
I agree. I really cannot believe that we're like back here with it. Like out of everything, and people talk for so many months about how important this film was. Oh my gosh, we're doing the DC universe. This is huge. This is critical for these characters and everything. I cannot believe in some ways this is what we got. I thought either you play it James Gunn and go the full way if you have a lot of confidence, which I think he did have a lot of confidence to be fair, or you play it really safe because you're just trying to not do the DC extended universe again. That got so messy. It became such a flop. It became such a joke. I certainly did not expect us to already be sitting here saying, well, I'm not really excited about this, but I'm kind of hopeful that these films can overcome this voice with Gunn. I am excited again for Supergirl. I'm interested in Clayface. I also think I look at Warner Brothers though, and like I agree. I don't think Superman's going to be the huge cultural hit that they expected it to be. You also can see with like Superman Returns, even a really good box office performance sometimes is not enough. They expect something massive with these, and then you look at this upcoming slate. And you have Supergirl, which, like, call me crazy, a film about a comedic, like, young girl in the superhero genre, doesn't always necessarily deliver box office hits when it plays into comedy and when it's fun. Shout out Birds of Prey. You have Clayface, which is a largely like queer horror story, which is going into body horror. I don't know how far in that genre they're actually going to go. Then you just have a bunch of projects where like I think the average person also does not give a fuck about 90% of these characters. I don't think the average person's like, whoa, Swamp Monster, gotta be there opening night. And I just start to lose confidence when you look at Warner Brothers and you're like, should I even invest in this universe if I think in 3 films we're going to be pivoting and we're going to be trying something different? Because I am quite confident next year's films are not going to bring the box office results, even if Superman does. I'm really surprised that this film did not do more to make sure it hooks an audience. And I don't think that is there. So I'm both worried about the quality of the films coming up, and I'm worried about this studio, which is also like a pretty horrific studio when it comes to canceling stuff and changing course. And they're very desperate to do a hit. That is something that is very, very clear when you look at the DC Extended Universe. They try to course correct over and over with that. I'm shocked I'm coming out of Superman with as little faith for the DC universe as I am. And I didn't even like fully hate this film. And again, I think Supergirl, especially I with that director, I feel very confident it's going to be really good, or at least good. But no, I'm definitely nervous going forward.
I think Clayface is going to be the first movie to make $0. Like I
It's going to
legitimately
make at
think
least 24 from us going. What do you mean?
that's true. We're gonna pack the house on 9/11, which is actually when it opens. To for Clayface. Um, it's just yeah. I think Supergirl's got a shot depending on how well this does. Like I think that although the idea of having them come out back to back is so weird, but I I think that if this movie really if it really really does well, which I still think is possible, even though I'm not sure. I I think Supergirl's in a pretty good spot because there's a lot of kind of it dovetails into it pretty well.
I mean, Suicide Squad did really good, and then Birds of Prey did that. We'll get there. We'll see,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That's true.
I also
And
just see
then
like the
we'll see where we are.
conversation.
And go ahead.
I just see the conversation, not that I validate this, but like this politically has definitely caused some drama. Typically, when films become, it's like the First Man effect. I say this all the time, where it's like if a film gets politicized, it's over. Even if like the liberals who like don't even care about the argument will be like, oh, it's controversial and like ditch it. I don't know if the next film being about this like party girl is gonna like get the MAGA on board. We'll see.
Well, I don't think it's going to get the MAGA on board, and but I do think it's going to more depend on how the like incel kind of chorus takes to it, which it seems like is it going to be an Ironheart situation? Is it going to be? I mean, obviously she's white, so like I don't think it'll be that intense. But like, will it be a situation where they just hate it because she's a woman? Probably. then we're going to probably have to have the conversation of what kind of fandom James Gunn cultivates by making a TV show about a Nazi who gets redeemed and is actually a great guy. Excited, excited for that. Um,
Well,
the more we talk
he's
about it,
never
the
been
more.
accused of misogyny, at least. So
Yeah, well, I think he has. Okay. But
yes,
I've honestly always defended him on that. Because I do think he's had a number of really strong characters who are women. But this, I'm done after this. The Jimmy Olsen and Miss Tessbach, or whatever her name is, fucking plot line, really, I was like, I'm at my wit's end. You're on your own, buddy. Which is sort of like you're on your own, kid. It's just like, that's sort of how I feel about this whole universe. I'll see them, I guess. I don't think I'll anticipate them. I think I'll be excited for the Batman Part 2, mostly because that's going to be its own movie. And it's going to be separate. And I think like there's probably more potential in the Elseworlds movies than the main timeline, which I would say is not great. I think Lanterns, the TV show, might be really good. I think that like the idea of doing like a true detective style mystery series, if it's actually like cool and gritty, I think that could be fun. Although I'm not encouraged by um, Nathan Fillion's turn in this, but Nathan Fillion is literally always terrible. So I'm not going to put that on Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre until I see them. Yeah, I don't know. I might just be off the bus on this one. I might just. I've loved this genre my whole life, but this was really like a moment. Like when I was in that theater and that fucking Nazi peacemaker shows up and everyone goes, "Whoa, yeah!" I almost fucking walked out of the movie. I'm not even kidding. Like I literally was like, this was maybe pure excitement wise my most anticipated of the year, and I legitimately like pondered just. I was like, I'm just about to get up. And then like the 800th Jimmy Olsen and his Taskmaster scene started, and I did go to the bathroom and check out for about 5 or 6 minutes of the movie just because like I needed a break. Like it's just like uh terrible film.
yeah.
Terrible start. If it were me, cancel it. Like I don't really want to see anything else. Like it would be very convenient for me and my emotional investment and schedule if they could just like junk this whole thing. I think, and then maybe just let Matt Reeves do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't cry. Just do it again. Yeah, Matt Reeves, just do it again. Start over, and we'll just keep doing it until we um, find a success, which so far is not looking very likely. I think that's probably going to do it on our conversation of Superman. I don't think either of us really recommend you go to the theater to see it. If you want to, though, it's out. So you can go enjoy it in IMAX with all your friends and laugh and holler and say this is the best film of all time. If you could scream like Soups, go in there and be like, whoa, oh my God, Peacemaker, ah. Highly recommend, I guess, you do that if you want. With that, let's go to our question of the week, because while we are negative on this Superman, hopefully there's a Superman film we're also positive on. We're asking today, what is our favorite Superman film to date? Michael, what is your favorite Superman film?
Not to be basic, but I really think that it's the Richard Donner original. It's a really good movie. It just has a very classic quality to it. I don't think it's as good as some people say. But the first people don't talk about how bad the first like hour of the Richard Donner movie is. It's got the Marlon Brando performance is terrible. And then there's a whole like little bit of the movie where it's teenage Clark and it's not Christopher Reeve, and it's this like terrible teenage actor who we just like I just didn't connect with at all. I think that that part of the movie would have been really good if Christopher Reeve was in it. And then by the time Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman and Margot Kidder show up, it's like there's maybe 80 minutes of the movie left, and it's just like go, 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 much like this movie. But I I think that just like overall, that is kind of the best, most pure iteration that we've had in film, even though I'd even say that one is pretty flawed. I really want to like Superman. I feel like we could have a really great Superman movie that actually is the movie we need right now. Even if this wasn't it.
Believe me, I watched all the Superman films in preparation for this for the first time, and every time I kind of expected, is this going to be the one? And it never was. Maybe it exists in the animated world. Sadly, Paul could not be here today. I know he's a big fan of the animation. I did ask him what his favorite film was for Superman, and he did say The Death of Superman 2018. He also liked Reign of the Supermen from 2019. So maybe it is just in that animated space, and we need to go full in on the DC animated universe and enjoy. For me, I find the first one to be incredibly boring. I think Superman 2, while still flawed, just narrows it down and gets to the point a lot quicker and a lot more effectively. If I'm being honest, I think Superman 4 kind of slaps, but I'm not going to do that today. I have this thing where I always liked
We need the Superman Quest for Peace solo.
Yo, it's so good. I'm like, I was watching it. It's easily my favorite. I put number 2 because I'm a coward. And number 4 is easily my favorite. It's the only one I'd rewatch. It's genuinely great at times.
I saw
Yes,
it
it's
when I
silly.
was
I
a
don't
kid,
care.
and I like rented them from the library. And I remember even as a kid being like, "Oh fuck, this really sucks." I
But
remember Nuclear Man. I remember like I just know it's like the production value just went out the window by the time they got to four. And like I know I remember even watching the documentary about Christopher Reeve that like by the time they got to the fourth one, he was just like, "For fuck's sake, like free me."
yeah, the action's
Um,
bad and silly, but it's bad and silly in all of them. Like, it's also 90 minutes, y'all. It's not 3 hours. Like, we got to take the wins where we can get them. I have this thing where I like always naturally like the worst movies of all time. I like Cats. I like, any franchise you go in, and I like the worst one of it. It's not a character. I'm not trying to do it. I genuinely feel such dread. And I never felt it maybe more than Superman 4, where I'm watching this and I just like so desperately want to be a normal person and just hate this movie. And I go in and literally I'm like, I'm like loving this movie. Not loving. I give it like 3 stars to be clear. But it's genuinely depressing. And I feel like every time I say it, it comes off as if I'm trying to be like, I'm just so quirky. But like, no, it's just me, and no one suffers more than me from this. Trust me.
that's also how I feel about this 2025. Like I
Yeah.
literally like I was thinking about this right before we got on. I'm like, not plugged into the same wall that everyone else is?
Yes.
Like
This is
so
how I
I
felt.
totally get it.
This is how I feel about every single movie that ever releases. But it makes it to where I cannot tell if anyone's gonna like any movie, because I go in and I'm like, this is great, and then like the scores come out and it's like 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, okay, or I'm like, this is awful. Wow, what a horrible movie, and it's like 92%. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess if everyone likes this one, so just know no one suffers more than me. It's not a character. I'm gonna say Superman 2 though, but it is really 4 to be clear. Like clearly it's 4. With that, Michael, that's gonna do it for today. Where can we find you on social media?
TikTok, Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram. Um, who knows how much longer there's going to be a TikTok. Um, I don't know if I'm going to go to the,
Because they're releasing a new app. You're gonna go to whatever
America
it's called.
propaganda. I don't know if I'm going to go to the America propaganda only app. I think that might be my last stop.
You're not
Uh,
gonna. What an era though to kick off with weekly Peacemaker reviews for season
that's
2,
so
dropping in
true.
August. What a way to start!
So true. Oh boy, I'm not watching Peacemaker. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm not doing it. I like this. I was really ready to be like so like I'll watch anything in this universe. I'm curious about Lantern, so I'll probably watch that. But like, it's straight to the slot bin for me. But anyway, yeah. Who knows how much longer there's going to be an American TikTok, but or a international TikTok. I'll be on there until I'm not. Uh, and then we'll figure it out. We'll see where the road goes. I'm almost 30. It might be time for a
Every
change.
time to call
Pod-
it quits.
Podcast, podcast and Substack only. It might be the move. We'll see. Anyway, that's what I've got there.
And you can find me on Blue Sky and Letterbox, Carson Timar. Really just on Letterbox. I really don't use Blue Sky that much, but like technically I'm there. And with that, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Superman. Michael, we will be back in like 2 weeks, because we're going to be discussing Ari Aster's Eddington, a film I have been very, very tempted to pull from the schedule, and I know just like I have to do it. It's like a curse that has to be broken. I have to talk about this film. I can't just walk away from it. It's going to be hell. I'm letting everyone know it's going to be the most negative I've ever been on an episode, but we will get there when we get there. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.